He was a man with a scalpel, trained to fix faces. Every day he sculpted new noses, lifted tired eyes, erased scars. And yet, something didn't add up. One patient, a young woman, came in haunted by her crooked nose. Dr. Maxwell Maltz worked his magic. The surgery was perfect. But weeks later she returned, still broken, still convinced she was ugly. Another man, disfigured in war, wore his scars like armor. He stood tall, confident, even heroic. No surgery. No change. Just something different in his mind. That's when Dr. Maltz discovered something far more powerful than a knife. The self-image. The invisible face we wear in our minds. And so began his journey, not through hospitals but through the human spirit. He stopped operating on faces and started rewiring belief systems. What if your life is not limited by your past, but by your perception of who you think you are? This is the story of Psycho-Cybernetics. And once you understand it, truly understand it, you may never look in the mirror the same way again. Before we dive deeper, let's pause for a moment and understand what this book truly offers. Psycho-Cybernetics isn't just another self-help book. It's a mind manual, written by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, a renowned plastic surgeon who uncovered something extraordinary. The secret to personal transformation doesn't lie in fixing the outside, but in changing the way we see ourselves from the inside. In this audiobook-style journey, you'll discover how your self-image controls everything. Your confidence, success, relationships, even your happiness. Let's start now. Part 1. The Man Who Fixed Faces. It didn't begin in a therapist's office or a university lab. It began under a surgical light, where steel met skin, and change was measured in millimeters. Dr. Maxwell Maltz was one of the top plastic surgeons of his time. He rebuilt faces shattered by war, reshaped features for actors, and helped countless people who believed one flaw, a crooked nose, a scar, and asymmetry, was the reason they couldn't feel seen. Often, after surgery, something remarkable happened. People transformed, not just physically but emotionally. Their posture lifted. Their voice changed. They smiled, like someone reborn. But not always. Some patients, even after perfect operations, looked in the mirror and still whispered, "I don't see a difference." Or worse, "I still look wrong." That puzzled Dr. Maltz. How could some lives change so completely, and others remain stuck? Then came the breakthrough. Maybe the real problem wasn't the face in the mirror. Maybe it was the image behind the eyes, the self-image they had carried for years. One young woman with a flawless surgical result still saw herself as ugly. Another man, badly scarred from a fire, declined surgery altogether because he'd already accepted himself. Dr. Maltz saw it clearly. The way people see themselves matters more than how they look. He noticed the same pattern over and over, identical surgeries, completely different outcomes, all depending on one thing, their inner picture. He began to study psychology, hypnosis, and how identity is formed. He discovered that the mind is not a mirror, it's a camera. It captures a version of who you are, blurry, emotional, shaped by childhood, pain, and opinions, and replays it for life. Until you replace that image with something better. Not fantasy, not ego, but something deliberate, clear, empowering. So Dr. Maltz shifted his mission. He still operated on the body, but now he taught people how to operate on the mind. Through visualization, imagination, and internal rehearsal, his patients began to reprogram themselves, replacing self-doubt with confidence, anxiety with calm, shame with strength. And the results? Miraculous. In 1960, he published his discovery, a blend of psychology, science, and soul. He called it Psycho-Cybernetics, a new way to get more living out of life. And that is how this journey began. Not with therapy, not with motivation, but with a surgeon and a question. What if it's not your face that needs changing, but the image you carry in your mind? Because when that picture changes, everything changes. Part 2. The self-image is destiny. It begins in silence. Not the silence around you, but the one between your thoughts, where a whisper repeats, "You can't. You're not enough. You'll never be." That is the voice of your self-image. Dr. Maxwell Maltz called it the most powerful force in your personality. Not your past, not your willpower, but the picture you hold of who you are. Because here's the truth. You will never rise above the opinion you secretly hold about yourself. If you see yourself as a failure, you'll sabotage success. If you see yourself as unlovable, you'll push love away. Not because it's true, but because it doesn't match the story you've believed. The self-image works like a thermostat. Set it low, and no matter how high life turns up the heat, you'll find a way to cool everything back down, back to what feels normal. Opportunities will slip by. Confidence will flicker. You'll shrink, not because you can't grow, but because the image says you don't deserve to. This isn't wishful thinking. It's how the brain works. We don't act on the truth. We act on what we believe to be true, especially about ourselves. And unless that inner picture changes, nothing outside truly will. But here's the miracle. That image is not permanent. It was given to you by others, by pain, by misunderstanding. And now, you can replace it. With clarity. With repetition. With vision. Because when you change the image inside, your actions, your words, your very presence begin to match who you were always meant to be. Not a performance. Not a mask. But a return to your real self. Part 3. Your brain is a goal-seeking machine. What if I told you that you already have a built-in guidance system? One that's constantly working behind the scenes. Every second, every day, trying to bring your inner picture to life. It doesn't argue. It doesn't question. It simply obeys. Dr. Maxwell Maltz called it the servo mechanism, a scientific term for a self-regulating, goal-seeking machine. And believe it or not, that's exactly what your brain is. Not just a sponge for knowledge. Not just a warehouse of memories, but a living, adapting, target-driven system. Once a goal is locked in, even unconsciously, your mind begins to search for ways to achieve it. Not just in grand, visible actions, but in subtle shifts. In your choices, your focus, your energy, your direction. Think of a heat-seeking missile. It doesn't fly in a straight line. It zigs and zags. It makes 1,000 corrections per second. But it always adjusts itself back toward the target. That's how your mind works. The only question is, what target have you given it? If your self-image says, I'm shy, I'm not good with money, I'll always be alone, then that's the target. And your brain, without knowing any better, begins steering you in that direction. You'll miss the open doors, ignore the compliments, resist the chances to grow, because they don't match the internal map. But change the picture, and everything starts to shift. Suddenly, the same brain that once held you back becomes the most powerful force moving you forward. Because now, it has a new target, a new identity, a new blueprint, and it's working night and day, silently, relentlessly, to bring that version of you to life. You don't have to force it. You don't have to beg for confidence or fake happiness. You simply need to give your brain a clear, healthy, emotionally charged goal. A vision of who you are becoming. Not just what you want, but who you are. And then, trust the mechanism. It's already inside you. It's already listening. It's already waiting for new instructions. Part 4. Imagination, the key to reprogramming. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes. And picture this. You're standing on a stage. A spotlight warms your skin. Your voice is calm, steady, clear. You feel powerful, at ease, free. Is it a fantasy? Or is it rehearsal? Dr. Maxwell Maltz believed something radical. That imagination isn't just daydreaming. It's preparation. It's how we rewire the mind. Because your brain doesn't fully know the difference between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. Your nervous system responds to what you picture. That's why fear can freeze you, even if nothing's happened yet. That's why memory can move you, even years later. It's not just in your head, it is your head. And that is where real change begins. Maltz saw it in his patients. Those who imagined themselves as confident became confident. Those who imagined fear stayed stuck no matter how perfect the surgery. He realized, imagination is stronger than logic, stronger than willpower, stronger than knowledge. Because imagination builds belief, and belief shapes identity. So when you repeatedly picture a stronger, calmer, freer version of yourself, you're not pretending, you're programming. And once your brain believes it's real, it begins to make it real. This isn't motivation. This is neuroscience. Athletes do it. Pilots do it. Performers do it. They visualize, not to escape life, but to create it. When you imagine success, clearly and emotionally, you activate the same neural pathways as real life. And the more they fire, the more they wire. You change your brain, not by force, but by vision. So ask yourself, what are you rehearsing? Fear, failure, or strength? Because imagination is always running. And if you don't take control of the movie, it will play the same scenes again and again. You get to choose. Keep living the old story, or direct a new one. And when you do, when the picture inside finally changes, your reality will follow. Part 5. The Theater of the Mind. Imagine this. You enter a quiet room. The lights dim. The noise fades. And a single screen lights up, not outside, but within you. This is the theater of the mind. Not a fantasy. Not a distraction. But a sacred space where transformation begins. Dr. Maxwell Maltz believed that change starts in rehearsal. And this inner theater is where the new you is practiced again and again, until the outside world begins to reflect the inner one. Here's how it works. Each day close your eyes, slow your breath, and picture yourself vividly as the person you want to become. See the moment, feel the energy, hear your voice, calm, clear, confident. See your smile, real and relaxed. The more emotional, the more real it becomes. And your subconscious? It listens, because it doesn't argue. It doesn't judge. It accepts repetition, especially when charged with feeling, as truth. Feed it fear, it creates hesitation. Feed it strength, it builds certainty. Over time, this inner scene becomes familiar, and the nervous system always moves toward what feels familiar, even if it once felt impossible. This is how identity shifts, not with force, but with gentle repetition, with emotional clarity. It's not about thinking positive. It's about teaching your brain a new normal. Rehearse the difficult moment and succeed in it internally. Do it again tomorrow and the next day. Soon, when the real moment arrives, you won't panic. You'll perform because you've already lived it. Dr. Maltz saw this in his patients. Those who visualized healing healed faster. Those who imagined confidence transformed deeper. He saw actors, athletes, leaders, all using the same mental stage before they ever stepped onto a real one. They didn't hope it would go well. They had already seen it. You don't need a perfect script. You don't need to wait. You just need a quiet moment and the courage to see yourself differently. Not once, but again and again, with love, with patience and vision. Because when the picture becomes clear inside, your life starts to follow. Not by magic, but by identity. Rehearsed, accepted, lived, right there, in your own inner theater. Part 6. The Phantom of Failure. Some scars you can't see. They don't bleed. They don't bruise. But they ache, silently, every time you try to grow. You speak up and hear your own voice shaking. You step forward and feel something pulling you back. You reach for more, but a whisper says, "Who do you think you are?" That whisper, that invisible force, that's the phantom of failure. Dr. Maxwell Maltz saw it often. People who were physically whole but emotionally frozen. Not by what was happening now, but by what had happened long ago. One man, for example, had been humiliated in school when he spoke up in class. Now, decades later, he still avoided meetings, still sat in silence, still believed his voice didn't matter. Another had been told as a child that he was clumsy, forgetful, lazy. And no matter how much he accomplished as an adult, he still carried that label like a hidden name tag. These weren't current truths. They were ghosts, memories so emotionally charged that they became part of the self-image. They hardened into identity. Dr. Maltz called them phantom limitations, mental shadows of pain that no longer existed, but still controlled behavior, confidence, and belief. Just like an amputee who can still feel a missing limb, many people still feel the sting of a failure that's long gone, and they live according to that feeling, even if nothing's actually holding them back anymore. So the question becomes, how do you let go of a ghost? You don't fight it. You don't fear it. You see it. You recognize that the past event was real, yes, but the meaning you attach to it, that can change. Because the truth is, you are not the child who failed that test. You are not the teenager who was rejected. You are not the adult who stumbled, embarrassed, or broke down. You are not that moment. You are who you choose to be now. And when you revisit those memories from a new perspective, When you stop reliving the wound and start reframing the lesson, the phantom begins to fade, not because it never happened, but because it no longer defines you. Dr. Maltz taught this. When the old picture tries to reappear, when fear, shame, or doubt creeps in, don't argue. Don't run. Simply replace it. Go back to your theater of the mind. Paint a new scene. One where you speak with strength. One where you walk with dignity. One where you're no longer reacting to the past, but responding as your current self. Every time you do this, your nervous system learns a new pattern. And over time, the old ghost loses power. You're not denying the pain. You're just refusing to worship it anymore. Because the past is not a prophecy. It's a page already written. And the future is still blank. So if you've been haunted by old failures, by old voices, by old scars, it's time to remember that ghost doesn't live here anymore. It lives in yesterday. And you live now. Part 7, Dehypnotize yourself. You weren't born thinking you're not good enough. You didn't come into this world afraid to speak, afraid to try, afraid to be seen. Someone, somewhere, taught you that. Maybe it was a parent's impatient words, a teacher's criticism, a moment of humiliation you never forgot. Maybe it wasn't what they said, but what they didn't say. No, I believe in you. No, you're doing great. No, you are worthy just as you are. And slowly, you started to believe the opposite. Not because it was true, but because it was repeated. That's how all hypnosis works. A thought, repeated often enough, slips under the radar of logic and settles into the subconscious, where it starts to shape everything. Your decisions, your habits, your self-worth. Dr. Maltz saw it clearly. Most people are walking through life in a trance, not from a hypnotist's spiral, but from their own thoughts. I'm shy. I'm unlucky. I'm not attractive enough. I'm just not that kind of person. These aren't facts. They're mental scripts, programmed by repetition, reinforced by emotion, accepted without challenge. It's like a movie playing in the background of your mind. Quiet, constant, unquestioned. And every time you act according to that script, you deepen the trance. But here's the truth that changes everything. If you were hypnotized into limitation, you can dehypnotize yourself into freedom. You can wake up. You can become conscious of the script. You can interrupt the story mid-sentence and say, no, that's not who I am anymore. Dr. Maltz taught that rational thought, combined with imagery, was the antidote to mental hypnosis. When a negative belief arises, don't just silence it, examine it. Where did this come from? Is it true or just familiar? Would I teach this belief to someone I love? You'll start to see that most of the thoughts limiting you were never yours to begin with. They were passed down, picked up, accepted by a younger, more vulnerable version of you. But you're not that child anymore. You're not trapped in that memory anymore. And you don't need permission to choose a new truth. So how do you dehypnotize yourself? You stop accepting every thought as a fact. You stop rehearsing the pain that no longer fits. You begin imagining, daily, deliberately, the version of yourself that feels right now. You picture it. You believe it. You speak it. You live it. Not to impress others, but to free yourself. Because when you wake up and really see the mental cage you've been living in, you realize the door was never locked. You were always free to walk out. Part 8. Success is a habit, not a miracle. Success, confidence, happiness, they seem like miracles, don't they? Some people walk into a room glowing with ease. They speak without hesitation. They act like they belong, as if life handed them a secret map. And you wonder, were they just born that way? Do they have something I don't? But Dr. Maxwell Maltz had a different answer, one that shattered the illusion. Success is not a miracle. It's a habit. Not a dramatic transformation, but a quiet, consistent repetition, of belief, of action, of small daily choices. Maltz compared the brain to a machine, one that learns by doing. Like learning to type, ride a bike, drive a car. At first, your movements are awkward. You overthink everything. You make mistakes. You feel frustrated, but you keep going. You adjust. You repeat. And one day, it becomes second nature. You don't try anymore. You are. Confidence works the same way. So does courage. So does self-worth. They're not lightning strikes. They're built, one repetition at a time. You want to be confident? Then act, just once, with courage. Speak up even if your voice trembles. Walk into that room even if your hands shake. Say yes when every cell in your body says, run. That moment is not about impressing anyone. It's about teaching your nervous system. This is who I am now. Do it again tomorrow. And the next day. And the next. Each time you do, you carve a new neural path. A new habit. A new image. And slowly, the old voice fades. The hesitation softens. The shame loosens its grip. You stop pretending and start becoming. Dr. Maltz saw this with his patients. He would guide them to take small, intentional steps. Not grand gestures, not fake positivity, just habitual expressions of the person they wanted to be. And over time, they didn't need reminders. They didn't need the mirror. Because the self-image had caught up. They had become what they once only rehearsed. So if you're waiting to feel ready, stop. Readiness is not a gift. It's a muscle. If you're waiting for confidence before you take the leap, flip the pattern. Take the leap and let confidence follow. If you're waiting for motivation, create motion and watch motivation appear in its wake. Because success, real success, doesn't feel dramatic. It feels natural, like something you've done 100 times before. And that only comes through habit. Part 9. The power of relaxed success. What if everything you've been taught about success is only half the truth? We're told to hustle harder, push through, force the outcome, grind, strive, sweat, control. But Dr. Maxwell Maltz noticed something different. The people who truly performed at their best, whether on a stage, in sports, or in leadership, weren't tense, weren't clenched, weren't trying to prove anything. They were calm, focused, loose, relaxed. And in that state, a strange and beautiful thing happened. They stopped trying so hard and started allowing their best to come through. You've felt it before, haven't you? That moment when time slows down. You speak without overthinking. You act with ease. You surprise even yourself with how natural, how right everything feels. That is relaxed success. And according to Maltz, it's not luck. It's not rare. It's not only for the gifted few. It's a state you can learn, practice, return to anytime. But first, you have to unlearn tension. Because for many of us, effort became a shield. We were taught that if we weren't straining, we weren't doing enough. That if it doesn't feel hard, it must not be working. So we tighten, overthink, force the result. And in that tension, the flow disappears. The words dry up. The body stiffens. The confidence vanishes. Not because we lack talent, but because the system is overworked. Maltz taught a simple but powerful idea. Your best performance, in anything, comes when you are relaxed, not rigid. Focused, not frantic. Engaged, not anxious. And he gave a tool to practice it. Each day, spend just 10 minutes in quiet stillness. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders drop. Let the noise fade. And begin to picture yourself in a moment of challenge, moving with calm clarity. Not hyperactive. Not frozen. Just steady. Like a wave flowing toward shore. Like someone who trusts themselves even when they don't know the outcome. That's what the most effective people carry. An inner stillness that steadies the outer world. You don't need to force confidence. You need to remove what's blocking it. You don't need to scream your worth. You just need to stop doubting it. Because the most magnetic people, the most trusted voices, the most powerful leaders, aren't the loudest. They're the calmest. And that calm, that steady center, it lives in you too. You don't have to chase it. You just have to relax and let it rise. Part 10, the feedback loop of growth. Have you ever seen a guided missile in motion? It doesn't fly in a perfect line. It's constantly correcting. Tiny shifts, minute adjustments, zigzagging toward its destination. And yet, it always gets there. Not because it never strays off course, but because it knows how to correct. Dr. Maxwell Maltz saw this pattern in machines and realized it was the same inside the human mind. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be willing to adjust. That is the feedback loop of growth. Every mistake you make is not a judgment. It's not a sentence. It's just information. It says, not quite there yet. Try a little more to the left. Refine this. Reframe that. And that's it. But somewhere along the way, we learn to turn feedback into failure. We took a missed opportunity and called ourselves worthless. We took one rejection and built an identity around it. We took one mistake and made it the story of who we are. But what if you saw every mistake as mechanical, not emotional, not personal, just feedback? A soft nudge from your inner guidance system saying, let's try again. This time with more clarity. Because the truth is, growth doesn't come from success alone. It comes from noticing what didn't work and adjusting again and again and again. Just like the missile, just like the machine. Dr. Maltz taught that your self-image too is flexible. It doesn't shatter from one mistake unless you believe it must. So the next time you stumble, pause. Don't collapse. Don't spiral. Just ask, what did I learn? What's the next smallest step I can take? What can I adjust? That's how real transformation happens. Not in leaps, but in small, intelligent shifts. Not by never falling, but by realigning faster each time. Growth is not a straight line. Healing is not a perfect slope. Success is not one golden moment. They are spirals, loops, repetitions. Each time you return wiser, more refined, more grounded. So let go of the need to get it right on the first try. Let go of the voice that calls you a failure, and listen instead to the feedback. It's not shouting, it's whispering, and it's always pointing you forward. Part 11, Becoming the New You. Now take a breath. Let it be slow. Let it be full. Because you've walked through something powerful. Not a book, but a mirror. A mirror that shows you not just who you've been, but who you can become. And here, at the end of the journey, comes the most important truth of all. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not the story you've repeated so many times that it began to feel like fact. You are possibility. You are imagination. You are growth in motion. You are the painter and the canvas. Now, you have the tools. The theater of the mind, where you rehearse the future until your brain calls it real. Imagination, not as escape but as instruction. Relaxation, not as laziness but as the doorway to clarity. Repetition, not as struggle but as alignment. And the self-image, the inner thermostat that now you know how to reset. All of it is yours to use. Not once, not just when you're inspired, but daily. So from this day forward, speak a little more kindly to yourself. Visualize the future with just a little more certainty. Step into rooms with just a little more presence. And when old voices rise, thank them, then replace them. Because you are not here to repeat the past. You are here to reprogram the future. Remember, the image in your mind is the blueprint of your destiny. And now, you are the architect. Thank you.